Okay, so you've got a DJ controller in front of you, but what exactly do all of these buttons do? In this episode, I'm going to break down exactly what everything does so that you can start mixing with confidence. Let's get it. You are watching the DJ Mentor. Real tips, real music, real growth. All right, so let's break this down. So we have three main sections. We have our decks, we have our mixer, and we have our browser section. Some mixers have a mic section and also a booth section. That's a little bit more advanced because you're likely not using mics at the beginning. And then in terms of booth, this will more likely be for locations like in the club, where booth means this is your volume controls for your speakers that are for the DJ booth, which are separate than the speakers and the sound for the rest of the venue or the rest of the club. We're going to think of this like a cockpit, where everything does something different, however, they all work together. So we're going to stop guessing and we're going to start mixing with confidence. So this is your jog wheel. This is how you can go backwards and forwards on your track slightly. So you can nudge it forward or you can nudge it back. You can backspin, and you can use this to beat match or to align one track to another. So let's say we have the track on the right playing. We can make small nudges and adjustments on the left jog wheel to match up our left track with our right track. Light touches equals small adjustments. Okay, let's talk about the cue and play pause. I think play and pause is self-explanatory. Now let's talk about the cue button though. The cue button is your best friend. So you can use this to set cue points, and a cue point can be where your track starts, or you can press and hold the cue point to let a track play and listen to the beginning. If you like what you hear, you can then press the play button right below it, let go of everything, and the track will continue to play. But if you just let go of the cue button or the cue point button, then the track will stop right there. If a track is playing and then you press the cue point somewhere in the middle, you'll set a cue point there. And from that cue point, you can either just press a cue point to start right at that point, or if you look at the loop buttons up top, you can use that cue point to, for example, be the beginning of the loop. Once you press the out button, your loop will start where that cue point is and then end where you pressed that out button. You can also use your cue points to prepare your transitions or your drop points. We'll get into that when we're mixing a little later. Now this is your pitch fader. So sliding it up slows the BPM, slowing the track down. Sliding it down closer to you speeds up the track, increasing the BPM. And this is crucial for beat matching. So first thing you want to do is make sure track A and track 2 have the same BPM or beats per minute. Now this is the beat sync button, also known as the sync button. This is for babies. It's very useful. However, I want you guys to practice beat matching with your ears because you cannot rely on the beat sync button because it's essentially training wheels. You guys are not going to be professionals as a beat sync DJ. So if you press it, as you can kind of guess, it automatically synchronizes the two songs together. I'm surprised Spotify doesn't have a beat sync for the transitions because right now Spotify, you can crossfade the songs, but it sounds like a bad DJ mix, don't you think? You guys should fix that. All right, now let's get into the mixer part of the controller. Okay, first things first, you have your 2 or 4 volume faders, 4 if it's a 4-channel controller. So your volume fader, as you can guess, is the volume of that track there, and this controls the volume of each deck. The smoother your volume fader gain, the smoother your transitions. Now right below that is a crossfader, and this is how you can move the volume from one track to the other. So scratch DJs love the crossfader, however, the volume fader gives you more control for volume mixing. You're likely at the beginning going to be using more of the volume fader, not much of the crossfader. Now let's talk about the EQ knobs. So this is actually where the magic happens. So at the bottom you have your low. So this controls your low frequencies, which is your bass. And then in the middle, you have your mids, which will be your melodies, your voice, many instruments. And then your highs would be your hi-hats and your high frequencies and your claps. So let's play with these, listen to what each does. what it affects. These are the little details you use to EQ your songs in and out. Now, when you're mixing, one good rule of thumb is you never have two basses on at the same time. However, you can have mids and highs on at the same time. We'll get more into that as we start mixing. And now these are your gain knobs. So think of this as another level of volume for your tracks. So you can adjust these to make sure one track is not louder than the other. You'll come across sometimes some tracks are just recorded a little bit quieter. So if track 2 is a little bit quieter than track 1, you can turn up that gain knob to make sure the volumes are much more even. And then also just be careful to not crank up the gain knob too much because you will see clipping. So if you're seeing your meters hit the red, it means you're clipping and you're playing the music louder than the volume it was intended to be played at. And then under your EQs, you have your filter sweeps. So if you turn it towards low, first it's going to cut out the high frequencies and then start to cut out the low frequencies. And it's going to leave you only with the low frequencies. If you turn it up towards high, first it cuts off the low frequencies and then later cuts off the high frequencies, leaving you with the very highest frequencies. On controllers, you're going to find in many venues, restaurants, clubs, these buttons are going to be attached to an effects panel on the left. So you might have dub echo activated or sweep activated. Whatever button you have activated there is what this knob will be assigned to. Okay, let's talk about the looping buttons. Very simple, however, very important and key to DJing. Whenever you're listening to music, you're essentially listening to loops. And these loops are separated by phrases. So this phrase has a certain number of loops. So you're looping the bass, you're looping certain instruments. The next phase, you might take away an instrument or you might add an instrument. You might take away some vocals, you might add a vocal. Your choruses or loops. Anyway, this is how you loop in, and then if you press out, that is how you loop out. So you begin it with the in and you close the loop with the out. If you press this forward button here, you can extend the loop by double. If you press it again, it doubles the loop again. So now you have a 4-bar loop. If you press it again, now you have an 8-bar loop, which is a phase, by the way. And if you press this button right next to out, this exits the loop and then the song keeps playing. There are many, many, many uses of loops. So for example, if you have short songs, you can use the loop to beat match early and then just have the loop playing with the short section of the song, fade it in nice and slow. Once everyone's ears are used to hearing that part of the loop, then you can exit the loop and then fully bring on that song. You can use loops to add texture to whatever's currently playing by looping maybe some vocals or some instruments off of one track to the side. You can use loops just to spice up your tracks. There's so many, many uses of loops. I can do a whole episode. And then we have these cue buttons here. So these cue buttons right under the tracks are how you turn the headphones on for those specific tracks. And then you usually also have a cue button for the master. If you cue the master, that's obviously how you'll hear what everyone else is hearing. Now, one little small detail is if you want to hear your effects through your headphones, you're going to want to have the master cue on. If you just have the channel cues on, you're not necessarily going to hear the effects that you're applying to the tracks through your headphones. So we're going to use the cue buttons to turn on or off certain tracks so we can hear what they sound like in the headphones before we put that out into the master or into the speakers for everyone else to hear. Okay, let's talk about the browser and the effects area. So this is your browser knob and these are your load buttons. Use the browser knob to scroll through your library and then the load buttons to load those tracks onto your deck. Make sure you keep your library organized. Okay, quick little introduction into effects. So effects add flavor and color to your sets. So use them sparingly because you don't want to overdo it and be one of those effects junkie DJs. But just to give you a quick little rundown, some go-to effects would be echo effects, reverb effects, and sweep effects. Now on this FLX4 controller, we have effects on the pads as well. However, don't rely on using the effects on the pads because in the real world, or let's say at restaurants and clubs, beach clubs, the mixers don't always have effects on the pads. The effects are usually on this effects channel in this middle here or on the side over here. and it's best to practice using the effects in this little area here because this is more universal to most controllers that you'll find in many, many places. So echo effect, kind of like it sounds, creates an echo. You can adjust the beats that the echo play on. You can have some fun with it. I love half echo and quarter beat echo. And then sometimes I like fading into a 1 beat or a 2 beat echo with vocals. So just remember, don't overdo it and let your music breathe. Now you know what every button does, so no more mystery. Let's focus on mastery. So in the next episode, I'm going to show you how to beat match manually the way a real DJ does it. If you're liking this DJ content, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode for straight up DJ knowledge. Peace.